it's Amy. Today I want to talk to you about, as a buyer, how do you make your offer more attractive to the seller? We're coming out of a really crazy intense seller's market. I know I've heard some really insane things that buyers were offering, and I know personally that the offers were so far over asking price, and asking price was such a high, insane price to begin with. But I've heard of people losing out because they couldn't offer 50,000 over asking price, all cash, and that's crazy to me. So I had some buyers that, in a regular market, what they were pre-approved for was perfectly reasonable for the size houses they were looking at. But in that market, it was just impossible. And a few of them had FHA mortgages, which made it even harder because FHA has a bit stricter regulations than conventional. And of course, cash has no regulations really. You can just buy anything you want. So that was a big challenge to overcome. Now, I know that we're coming out of this insane market, uh, but it is still technically a seller's market. Inventory is still at record lows, and there are still way more buyers than sellers on the market. So even though prices are not as insane as they've been the last 2 years, it's still a seller's market, and you should be prepared for that. So here are some things that I figured out you can put in your offer that will be more attractive to sellers without simply having to offer like a kidney or your firstborn child, um, or a dog. I've heard of people actually offering animals, just insane. So here you go. Here are some things. Especially if you have an FHA mortgage that you're trying to get an offer approved with. So FHA has slightly stricter requirements as far as the condition of the house. Conventional, it's really just base requirements. The house has to be livable. So things like a floor and a kitchen and a bathroom, like plumbing, you should be able to use the bathroom, and just basic things like that. FHA is a little bit stricter. Nothing can really be like rotting off the house. The structure has to be really sound. VA is much more strict, but most of my experience has been with FHA buyers. So there's just, it's all very subjective. Basically, is based on that appraiser. Each appraiser lets some things go and is more strict about other things. I had one FHA house where the seller had to replace the corner molding on the garage. It just looked bad. I don't know. But then on other houses, they've let that go. So it's really subjective. But just in this kind of market where every house has 20 offers, FHA can scare some sellers because they want a sure thing, which is why if there's cash close to the top of the offers, that'll almost always win. So as an FHA buyer, you want to make yourself look better. And that part of that is acknowledging that you know the differences in your mortgage as opposed to the others. One thing that if my buyers were capable and had the cash available, one thing I encouraged them to offer was an appraisal gap. So if you make an offer of 400 and the house only appraises for 375, the bank will not give you the mortgage of the same percentage that you were going to get before. Now they're going to base it on the house being 375, so your mortgage is going to be less. So I'm not saying that you need to offer 25,000 appraisal gap, but generally speaking, any amount just shows the seller that like you acknowledge that this may happen, and you are not going to put it all on them to make up the difference by dropping their price 25,000. So even if you offer 5 grand towards a possible appraisal gap, that shows them, that you're willing to work with them and not just be like, oh well, it appraised less, that's your problem. because then they'll just go with a bit different offer, a higher offer, and they won't consider you. Another thing that you can offer is money towards any possible required appraisal repairs. So that means that when the appraiser comes, if they say for FHA, this railing needs to be replaced, instead of that being the seller's responsibility, you will put up the money for that, not to exceed whatever it is amount that you agree to. It could be $5,000, $10,000. On Long Island, I haven't really come across this problem very much. Um, there was one house that was clearly a fixer-upper, and so that did have to be worked out. But the other buyers I've had that have offered that have never had to use it. They've also never had to use the appraisal gap that they offered. But it's just a thing that makes sellers feel more secure. That being said, don't offer it if you don't have it, because you really never know. You don't know what the appraiser is going to say or truly what the condition of the house is. You know, you may see something that you don't think is a big deal, but that appraiser may come in and say, absolutely not, this needs to be fixed. And so then it's something that has to be dealt with. And you'd rather have dealt with that up front. And so both sides have the assurance that this deal will still go through regardless of if it appraises low or needs certain repairs done. So putting money towards possible appraisal repairs is a good thing that gives the seller peace of mind that, you know, if there's something they need to do to the house to make this go through for you, you will help them cover that. Something else that I kind of encountered with that is if that needs to be done, you probably should also put in the contract whose responsibility it will be to find the contractor to do the work. Because there was some issue with that last time. The seller wanted to take care of it, but then the buyer didn't trust that they weren't finding someone to upcharge and get more money, you know. But that was I could do a whole video on that transaction. That was a whole mess of things with a lot of issues, that whole transaction. So that's not typical, but you might want to consider having that included in the offer, that if you're paying for the repairs, you are going to find the contractor to do the repairs and see if they go for that. Other things, obviously, being flexible with the move date is good. Some sellers list their house and aren't actually ready to move for like 3 or 4 months. So if you are able to be flexible in move date, that's good. They appreciate that. Not having a contingency of something to sell is also really important, but you don't have so much control over that. If you are selling something and you don't have anywhere to go in between, then that is what it is. But if you have some family or friends that you could stay with for a month or two, just so that they don't have to worry about that, that's good. Or if you're renting, obviously, it probably doesn't matter. I'm sure you can go month to month as long as your landlord knows that that's what you plan to do, that you're just hanging around until the house can be moved into. So inspection is something a lot of people waived, and that is always an option. You can choose to waive inspection. I don't love that. Typically, what I advised my clients to do, if they want the house and they know they want it no matter what, I would still advise them to get an inspection, but maybe just put it that it's for their knowledge only. They won't ask the seller to change anything. That's generally never come up with a problem. The sellers are okay with you doing an inspection just so you know what you're getting into, as long as it won't affect your offer and you won't ask them to do anything. Because the appraisal is what will determine if anything has to get done. The inspection is really just for your peace of mind, so you know the house is sound, or just so you have a heads up, like if your roof is going to need to be replaced in 5 years, or if it's good and you don't need to worry about it for 10 or 15 years. You know, it's just so you are aware of any issues that may come up after you buy the house. So I really recommend you do an inspection, but if it's crazy competition on the house, then it's probably in your best interest to put that it's just for your knowledge and you won't ask for any changes or change in price. Other than that, that's all I've come up with. Some people in other parts of the country I read got really creative and like offered to pay for the seller's moving services or offered to buy them dinner. I mean, things got really crazy. But as far as my own personal experience, those things, the appraisal gap, the money towards appraisal repairs, flexible move date, no contingencies, inspection just for your knowledge or not at all. Those are the things that got the job done. And I have a pretty good track record with my buyers in that market. Generally, all of them had an accepted offer within 2 weeks of working with me. So I think those things work. And I know for a fact that most of them were not the highest offer. So take that for what it's worth. It is still a seller's market. I know people don't want to hear that, but it's not as crazy as it was. So instead of offering 30,000 over asking, maybe offer 5 and see where you go from there. People are more likely to counter now because they are noticing that they're getting less action on their listings, less showings, less offers, lower offers. Um, so you just kind of have to see what the competition is, and your representation should be able to kind of feel that out for you. They should be able to talk to the listing agent and find out if there's other offers and, what kind of action there's been on the house. So that gives you a better idea of your jumping off point. And plus, the market ebbs and flows, buyers, sellers, buyers, sellers. So this is just good info to have for you in the future, because even when it does go down to a buyer's market, it will come back up again in the future. And who knows how many houses you'll have to buy in your lifetime. So take that all for what it's worth, mull it over, talk to your realtor about it, and good luck. Happy house hunting.